The air in Willow Creek nursing home smelled of antiseptic and faded dreams. I sat by the window in my small room, the one with the peeling paint and the single daisy in a chipped vase. My hands, once strong enough to knead dough for my son's favorite cinnamon rolls, now rested frail and trembling in my lap. At 75, I'd lived a life of love and sacrifice, but nothing prepared me for this being tucked away in a corner of the world while my son, David, lived in the home I'd built with my late husband, Arthur. The house was paid off with decades of sweat, tears, and quiet pride. Now, it was David's, along with my heart, which he'd unknowingly shattered. It wasn't always like this. I raised David with every ounce of my being. I remember the nights I stayed up sewing his Halloween costumes, the mornings I walked him to school under the oak trees, his small hand in mine. He was my light, my reason. When Arthur passed 10 years ago, David was there, promising to care for me. "You'll never be alone, Mom," he said, his voice steady. I believed him. But life has a way of twisting promises. 2 years ago, David sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless meals, and told me I was too much to care for. My arthritis had worsened, and my memory wasn't what it used to be. "It's for your own good, Mom," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The nursing home will take better care of you." I wanted to scream that I wasn't a burden, that I just needed my home, my garden, my memories. But I saw the strain in his face, the exhaustion. So, I nodded, packed a single suitcase, and left the house I'd poured my soul into. The first months at Willow Creek were a blur of gray walls and forced smiles. The staff were kind enough, but their kindness couldn't fill the void. I missed the creak of my porch swing, the smell of my rose bushes, the way sunlight filtered through my kitchen curtains. Most of all, I missed David. He visited at first, bringing store-bought cookies and stilted conversation. But the visits dwindled. Months passed without a word. I learned from a neighbor's letter that he'd moved his new wife, Laura, into my house. They were living my life, while I was left with a narrow bed and a view of a parking lot. I wasn't angry, not at first. I told myself David was busy, that he deserved happiness. But as the days stretched into a year, then two, a quiet ache grew into something sharper. Betrayal. Not because he'd moved on, but because he'd erased me. I'd given him everything, my youth, my savings, my home, and now I was a footnote. A problem solved by a monthly check to Willow Creek. One morning, as I sat in the dining hall picking at lukewarm oatmeal, a new resident, Clara, rolled her wheelchair beside me. She was 80, with a laugh that defied her frail frame. "You look like you're carrying the world, Eleanor," she said, her eyes sharp. I shrugged, but she pressed on. "What's got you so heavy?" Maybe it was her warmth, or maybe I was just tired of holding it in. But I told her everything, David. The house. The silence. She listened, nodding, then said, "You're not done yet, dear. You've got fire in you. Use it." Her words lit something inside me. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't invisible. I'd spent my life building, nurturing, sacrificing. I wasn't going to fade away. David's birthday was in 3 weeks, and an idea took root, a reckless, stubborn idea. I'd show up, not to beg or accuse, but to remind him who I was, who we were. I didn't know how I'd get there or what I'd say, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let my story end in this sterile room. The next weeks were a flurry of planning. I had no car, no money beyond my meager savings, and a body that betrayed me at every turn. But I had Clara, who became my conspirator. She knew a volunteer driver, Tom, who made weekly trips into town. "He's a softie," Clara whispered. "Tell him your story, and he'll help." I did, my voice shaking as I explained my plan. Tom, a burly man with a gentle smile, agreed to drive me to my old house on David's birthday. "No one should be forgotten," he said, squeezing my hand. As the day approached, I felt a mix of fear and resolve. What would David say when he saw me? Would he be ashamed, angry, or worst of all, indifferent? I spent hours writing a letter, my hands aching as I poured my heart onto the page. It wasn't an accusation, but a reminder of the love we'd shared, the home we'd built, the woman I still was. I folded it carefully, tucking it into my coat pocket. The night before David's birthday, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, picturing the house. I could still see every detail: the faded blue shutters, the oak tree where David carved his initials, the garden where I'd taught him to plant seeds. It wasn't just a house. It was a life. My life. And I was going to take it back. Not with anger, but with truth. The morning of David's birthday dawned crisp and clear, the kind of day that used to call me to my garden. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy sweater Arthur always loved and a scarf David had given me years ago. My hands shook as I pinned my hair, but I felt a flicker of my old strength. Clara wheeled into my room, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You look like a woman on a mission, Eleanor," she said, handing me a small daisy from the nursing home's garden. "For luck." I tucked it into my coat, my heart swelling with gratitude for this unexpected friend. Tom arrived at 9, his old van rattling into the parking lot. He helped me into the passenger seat, my wheelchair folded in the back. As we drove, the familiar roads unfolded like pages of a book I'd read 1,000 times. The bakery where I used to buy David's birthday cakes, the park where he'd learned to ride a bike, all rushed back, sharp and aching. "You nervous?" Tom asked, glancing over. I nodded, clutching the letter in my pocket. "But I'm ready," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. The house came into view, and my breath caught. It looked the same, yet different. The shutters were freshly painted, the lawn neatly trimmed. A new swing hung on the porch, and a child's tricycle sat by the steps. David's life had moved forward, while mine had stalled. Tom parked across the street, helping me into my wheelchair. "I'll wait here," he said. "Take your time." I nodded, my heart pounding as I wheeled myself toward the front door. The sound of laughter spilled from the house, David's laugh, mixed with others. A birthday party. I hesitated, my resolve wavering. What if I was intruding? What if he didn't want me here? But then I thought of Clara's words, "You've got fire in you." I rang the doorbell, the sound echoing like a challenge. The laughter stopped, and footsteps approached. The door opened, and there was David, taller, grayer, but still my boy. His eyes widened, a mix of shock and something else, guilt. "Maybe. Mom." His voice was a whisper, as if I were a ghost. Behind him, Laura appeared, her face polite but guarded. A little girl, maybe 4, peeked out from behind her, clutching a balloon. "Who's that, Daddy?" she asked. My heart twisted. I hadn't known I was a grandmother. "David," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Can we talk?" He hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside. Laura offered a tight smile. Of course. Eleanor. Come in. I wheeled into the living room. The familiar space now filled with new furniture. New memories. Balloons and streamers decorated the room. And a cake sat on the table. Half-eaten. Guests milled about, their chatter fading as they noticed me. David led me to the kitchen, where we could be alone. The table was the same, but everything else felt foreign. Why are you here, Mom? He asked, his voice low. I thought you were settled. The word stung, like I was a piece of furniture stored away. I took a deep breath, pulling the letter from my pocket. I came to give you this, I said, handing it to him. And to see you. It's your birthday. He took the letter, his fingers brushing mine. For a moment, I saw the boy who'd run to me with scraped knees, the teenager who'd hugged me after his first heartbreak. But then his face hardened. You shouldn't have come, he said. This isn't easy for me. I wanted to shake him, to ask how it was easy for me, but I held back. Read the letter, David, I said. Please. He nodded, tucking it into his pocket. Laura appeared, suggesting we join the party. I agreed, not wanting to cause a scene. The guests were polite, but their smiles were strained. The little girl, my granddaughter Lily, approached me shyly. Are you my grandma? She asked. I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. I am. It's nice to meet you, Lily. She grinned, handing me a piece of cake. For a moment, the room felt warm again. But David kept his distance, talking with guests, avoiding my gaze. I watched him, wondering where my son had gone. The letter burned in my mind, written about the love I'd poured into this house. Into him. I'd written about the pain of being forgotten, but also the hope that we could rebuild. I didn't want his guilt. I wanted his heart. As the party wound down, I knew it was time to leave. I wheeled toward the door, Lily trailing behind. Will you come back, Grandma? She asked. I looked at David, who was watching us now. I hope so, I said softly. He didn't speak, but his eyes held something new, maybe regret, maybe a spark of the boy I'd raised. Tom helped me back to the van, and as we drove away, I felt lighter. I'd shown up. I'd spoken my truth. Whatever came next, I'd face it with the same fire that had carried me here. Back at Willow Creek, the weight of the day settled over me like a heavy blanket. I sat by my window. The daisy Clara had given me now wilted in my lap. The visit hadn't gone as I'd imagined. No tearful reunion, no heartfelt apologies. But I'd seen David, met Lily, and left my letter. That was enough, wasn't it? Yet the ache in my chest told me I wanted more, not just for me, but for us. Clara found me that evening, her eyes searching my face. Well, she asked. I told her everything, my voice breaking as I described David's coldness, Lily's warmth. She squeezed my hand. You planted a seed, Eleanor. Give it time. Days turned into weeks, and I heard nothing from David. I tried to keep busy knitting scarves for the other residents, joining Clara for bingo, tending the nursing home's small garden. But my thoughts kept drifting to the letter. Had he read it? Had it changed anything? I pictured him tossing it aside, unopened, and the thought made my stomach twist. But then I'd remember Lily's smile, her small hand offering me cake, and I'd hold on to that. One afternoon, as I watered the geraniums, a nurse called my name. You have a visitor, Eleanor. My heart leapt, then sank. It couldn't be. David made his feelings clear. I wheeled to the common room, bracing myself. There, standing awkwardly with a bouquet of roses, was Laura. She looked out of place in her crisp blazer, her eyes darting around the room. Eleanor, she said, her voice soft. Can we talk? We sat in the garden, the roses resting on the table between us. Laura fidgeted, then spoke. David read your letter. He hasn't stopped talking about it. My breath caught. He's struggling. He didn't realize how much the nursing home hurt you. I wanted to ask why he wasn't here himself, but I stayed quiet, letting her continue. He feels guilty, but he's stubborn. I thought, maybe I could help. Her words were a lifeline, fragile but real. I told her about the house, the memories woven into every corner. I told her about David as a boy, how he'd loved my stories, how we'd built a life together. She listened, her eyes softening. I didn't know, she said. He never talks about the past. I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. David had buried me long before the nursing home. Laura left, promising to talk to David. I felt a flicker of hope, but also fear. What if this was all I'd get? A visit from his wife, a bouquet of roses? Clara, ever the optimist, disagreed. She came, didn't she? That's a start. I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. I'd spent so long waiting for David to see me, to remember me. Maybe I was asking for too much. A week later, a letter arrived, not from David, but from Lily. It was scrawled in crayon, with a drawing of a house and 3 stick figures labeled me. Daddy. Grandma. My eyes welled up as I read her words. I miss you, Grandma. Come back soon. Tucked inside was a note from Laura, saying Lily had begged to write to me. I clutched the letter, my heart swelling. I wasn't forgotten. Not entirely. That night, I wrote back to Lily, telling her stories about her father as a boy, about the garden we'd planted together. I included a pressed daisy, hoping it would make her smile. As I sealed the envelope, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for David anymore. I was fighting for Lily, for the chance to be her grandmother, to give her the love I'd given her father. The next morning, I found Clara in the dining hall, her grin wide. You've got that fire again, she said. I laughed, feeling it too. I didn't know if David would ever come around, but I wasn't invisible anymore. I had Lily's letter, Laura's visit, and my own stubborn heart. I'd keep writing, keep reaching out, keep showing up. Not just for them, but for me. As spring bloomed outside, I started planning again. Maybe I'd ask Tom to drive me to the house again, this time for Lily. Maybe I'd bring her a seedling to plant in the garden, a way to start new memories. The thought made me smile, a real smile, the kind I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The weeks following Laura's visit were a delicate dance of hope and patience. I wrote to Lily every few days, filling my letters with stories of her father's childhood, how he'd chased fireflies in the backyard, how he begged for extra cookies before dinner. Each letter felt like a thread, weaving me back into a family I'd thought I'd lost. Lily's replies came sporadically, her childish handwriting bursting with questions. Did Daddy really climb trees? Can you teach me to make cookies? I cherished every word, pinning her drawings to my wall, a bright spot in my gray room. Clara noticed the change in me. You're glowing, Eleanor, she said one morning over tea. Like you've got a secret. I laughed, admitting I felt alive again. Lily's letters were a lifeline, but they also stirred a deeper longing. I wanted more than words on paper. I wanted to see her, to hold her hand, to show her the garden where her father had grown up. But that meant facing David again, and the thought made my stomach knot. One evening, as I sat knitting a scarf for Lily, a nurse knocked on my door. "Phone call for you, Eleanor." My heart raced. Nobody called me here. I wheeled to the common room, my hands trembling as I picked up the receiver. "Mom." David's voice was tentative, almost unfamiliar. "It's me." I gripped the phone, my mind racing. "David," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's good to hear you." He didn't apologize. Not directly. Instead, he talked about Lily, how she kept asking about me, how she'd taped my letters to her bedroom wall. "She loves you," he said, his voice catching. I didn't realize how much she needed a grandmother. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling over me. "She needs you too, David," I said softly. "And so do I." There was a long pause. Then he said, "Can I come see you tomorrow?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Yes," I whispered. "I'd like that." When I hung up, Clara was watching me, her eyes misty. "Told you that seed would grow," she said. I smiled. But inside, I was a storm of emotions: hope, fear, love, all tangled together. David arrived the next afternoon, alone. He looked older, his shoulders hunched as if carrying a burden. We sat in the garden, the air thick with the scent of blooming lil betraying my nerves. He fidgeted, then pulled my letter from his pocket, worn from being read and reread. "I didn't know, Mom," he said, his voice low. "I thought I was doing the right thing, putting you here. I thought it was easier." "Easier for who?" I asked, not accusing, just needing to know. He looked away, his jaw tight. "For me," he admitted. "I was overwhelmed, Laura. Lily, the house. I thought you'd be safer here, better cared for." I nodded, seeing the truth in his eyes. He hadn't meant to hurt me, but he had. And that was the hardest part to forgive. We talked for hours, longer than we had in years. I told him about the nursing home, about Clara, about the loneliness that had seeped into my bones. He told me about his life, Laura's struggles, Lily's boundless energy, the pressure of keeping the house running. I didn't know how to handle it all. He said, "I thought I was protecting you." I reached for his hand, my fingers frail against his. "I just wanted to be part of your life," I said. "Not a problem to solve." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, the words I'd waited 2 years to hear. They didn't erase the pain, but they cracked open a door. Before he left, he promised to bring Lily next time. "She's dying to see you," he said, a small smile breaking through. I watched him go, feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. That night, I dreamed of the house not as it was now, but as it had been when David was small, when Arthur was alive, when love filled every room. I woke with a smile, knowing I wasn't just dreaming of the past anymore. I was building a future, one letter, one visit, one moment at a time. David's visit left me buoyant, like a boat finally catching the wind. I spent the next days planning for Lily's visit, sketching ideas for the garden we could plant together, imagining her laughter filling the air. Clara teased me relentlessly, You're like a kid waiting for Christmas, she said, her eyes twinkling. I didn't argue. For the first time in years, I felt like I had something to look forward to. A week later, David arrived with Lily in tow. She burst into the nursing home's common room, her pigtails bouncing, a drawing clutched in her hand. Grandma, she squealed, throwing her arms around me. I hugged her back, my heart swelling as her warmth melted the last of my doubts. David stood behind her, his smile hesitant but real. She's been talking about you nonstop, he said. I laughed, ruffling Lily's hair. I've been talking about you too, sweetheart. We spent the afternoon in the garden, Lily chattering as she helped me plant a row of marigolds. David watched, occasionally joining in, his hands awkward in the soil. It was a small thing, but it felt like a bridge tentative. But there, Lily told me about her school, her friends, the puppy she wanted. I told her about the oak tree in my old garden, how her father had climbed it and fallen, only to laugh it off. David's eyes softened at the memory, and for a moment, we were a family again. Before they left, Lily gave me her drawing, a picture of us planting flowers, with her stick figure self holding my hand. For your wall, she said proudly. I promised to hang it up, my throat tight. David lingered as Lily ran to the car. Mom, he said, his voice low. I want to do better. I want you to be part of our lives. I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. I'd like that, I said. But it's not just about visiting, David. It's about remembering. He looked at me, his face a mix of guilt and resolve. I know, he said. I'm trying. I believed him not because I was naive, but because I saw the effort in his eyes. The same eyes that had looked to me for comfort all those years ago. As they drove away, Lily waving from the window, I felt a quiet victory. I'd shown up, not just on his birthday, but in his heart. The weeks that followed were a slow rebuilding. David visited more often, sometimes with Lily, sometimes alone. We talked about the past, but also the future, how I could teach Lily to bake, how we could spend holidays together. Laura joined us once, her warmth surprising me. She admitted she'd pushed David to reach out, to face his mistakes. Your family, she said simply. I realized then that she wasn't my rival, but my ally. Clara, of course, claimed all the credit. I told you, Eleanor, she said, grinning over her tea. You've got fire, and it's catching. I laughed, but she was right. That fire had carried me through betrayal, loneliness, and doubt. It had brought me back to my family, not as a burden, but as a grandmother, a mother, a woman with stories to share. One day, David arrived with a surprise. We're taking you to the house for the weekend, he said. Lily's idea. My heart leapt, but I hesitated. The house wasn't mine anymore. Not really. It's still your home, Mom, he said, reading my thoughts. It always will be. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Clara handed me a fresh daisy as I left, whispering, Go light up that house. The weekend was everything I dreamed of. Lily dragged me to the garden, where we planted seeds together. David cooked dinner, burning the chicken but laughing it off. Laura hung Lily's drawings on the fridge, including the one she'd made for me. As I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset, I felt whole again. The house was different, but it was still home. And I was still me, Eleanor. Mother, grandmother, survivor. The weekend at the house changed everything. It wasn't just about being back in the familiar rooms or smelling the roses I'd planted decades ago. It was about reclaiming my place in the world, in my family. Lily's laughter echoed through the house, a sound I'd thought I'd never hear again. David's quiet smiles, Laura's gentle presence, they were small miracles, proof that broken things could mend, given time and love. Back at Willow Creek, I carried that weekend like a treasure. I told Clara every detail, from the way Lily insisted on watering the plants to David's awkward but earnest attempts to make up for lost time. "You did that," Clara said, her voice firm. "You showed up, and you didn't give up." I smiled, knowing she was right, but also knowing it wasn't just me. It was Lily's drawings, Laura's nudge, David's guilt finally giving way to love. David started talking about moving me closer to home, maybe an assisted living place where I could have my own space but still be part of their lives. It wasn't the house, but it was a step. I didn't need the walls or the garden anymore, not the way I used to. I needed my family, and they were finally reaching back. One sunny afternoon, Lily arrived with a surprisea seedling she'd planted at school, wrapped in a paper towel. "It's for our garden," she said, her eyes bright. We sat in the nursing home's garden, planting it together, her small hands patting the soil. David watched, his arm around Laura, and I saw something new in his face piece. He wasn't the boy I'd raised anymore, but he was still my son, learning to carry the weight of his mistakes and his love. As summer faded, I found myself looking forward, not back. I wrote more letters, not just to Lily but to David, sharing memories and hopes. He wrote back, short notes at first, then longer ones, filled with stories of his own. Laura invited me to Lily's school play, and I went, cheering from the front row as my granddaughter shone on stage. The other residents at Willow Creek started calling me the grandma with the big family, and I wore the title proudly. Looking back, I realized the nursing home hadn't been the end of my story, but a chapter. It was where I'd found Clara, where I'd rediscovered my fire, where I'd learned that love doesn't die, even when it's buried under years of hurt. I'd shown up on David's birthday, not just to confront him, but to remind myself who I was, a woman who'd built a home, raised a son, and now loved a granddaughter with all her heart. One evening, as I sat by my window, a new letter arrived from David. It was simple, just a few lines. "Mom, I'm sorry it took me so long. Let's make more memories." Tucked inside was a photo of the four of us, me, David, Laura, and Lily sitting on the porch swing, smiling. I pinned it to my wall, next to Lily's drawings, and felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't forgotten. I was Eleanor, and my story wasn't over. It was growing, like the seedling Lily and I had planted, reaching for the sun. And as I looked out at the stars, I knew I'd keep showing up. For every birthday, every moment, every chance to love.